Thank you, everyone, for coming to ICMI 2021. Today is the last day for the North American run, and we have a special treat. I've waited all week for this. We have Carnell Smith. For those who don't know, this is a man who sought to make a change in this world. He saw an injustice and he says, what can I do about it? Not what someone else can do it. What can I do about it? He changed some state laws and even went to the Supreme Court itself. And that's why it is a great privilege to introduce Carnell Smith. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Chris, and hello to you and all of the attendees of ICMI 2021. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, so as always, anyone out there who's watching us, please ask us questions. Carnell Smith is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to fraternity fraud. He has changed state laws, like he was talking about in our conversation. He went to, what was it, 9 states or 11?
11.
11 states to change their laws.
And
So
that's not a small feat. That is not a small feat.
So, do we have any questions in Hoover, Vernon?
No, not this moment. So I guess I kind of want to do a bit of an icebreaker question on my own. So how are you feeling about this conference?
Well, that's a great question, Vernon. First, it is an awesome opportunity to be able to present to a much broader audience so they can be aware that paternity fraud is one of four false allegation issues that face men and boys. Now, some of the obvious ones are false allegations of domestic violence, false allegations of sexual assault, false allegations of rape, and then false allegations of paternity fraud. And sad to say, paternity fraud kind of goes hand in hand with the one that like with rape, where you could go to prison with paternity fraud. You can go to jail, prison, and be financially devastated for decades. But yet people don't want me to talk about the money aspect. And what amazes me, the number one motivation why women take men and boys to court to get them to pay child support is for money, regardless of what country, whether yours is a euro or whether yours is a USD dollar. It is for money. Then why not make the courts operate in such a fashion that as many decisions as possible, the court bases those decisions based on verifiable fact. And I mean independently verifiable fact. And we operate in such a day and an age where genetic testing is so readily available that there is no child, virtually no child on the planet, that couldn't get verification that the alleged biological father and the alleged biological mother is actually related to them and be on their birth certificate. But I'm going to tell you this. A lot of people, their birth certificate is a sham and a fraud, often because mommy had a secret.
And not just that mommy had a secret, but the state facilitated her to have a secret. That in places like California, name anyone you want on their birth certificate, doesn't matter. And the state will be like, oh, okay, well, let's send them a letter. Hey, got lost in the mail. We don't care.
Yeah.
30 days, whether you knew or not.
That is amazing, because one of the things that I talked about in my book, Trapped by Law, is how men and boys can fall victim to an incorrect default judgment. What you just described, Chris, is that situation where she said he did it. He is presumed guilty because she said he did it. You know, cupcake is my misnomer, if you will, for the woman or girl who would use this crafty technique to employ the forces and power of the family court to go get her money. Notice I said her money. But wait a minute, it's for the kid. But who has the administration powers to divvy out the funds? She does. So incorrect default judgment is such a powerful tool that California was so good at it. At one time, they were establishing up to 80% of their paternity judgments by incorrect default judgment. That means someone said you did it. They sent the notice to your last known address. Now, Chris, one of those problems with that is that if you moved 3 years ago, it's probably likely that you did not renew your mail forwarding order after you had notified all of the parties that you knew needed to keep up with you. Who could foresee 2.5 years later an ex-girlfriend who, by the way, you haven't seen in 18 months, so therefore by sheer calculation you couldn't possibly be the father, but she knew you were a stand-up guy, you were gainfully employed, and you were traceable because you operate so publicly that you actually have a LinkedIn page. Well, sending that to your former address is enough that in many states that if you don't respond to that with a written demand for a DNA test and challenging that, that is then used to preclude you from getting a DNA test later and says, well, you didn't come to court because you were trying to get out of being responsible. And I answer that with bull feathers because so many women have understood this now, women and girls, that they're teaching this to others that, listen, all you got to do is put the guy's name down and she can literally put her address down. So what will ensure that that guy never gets the notice? Putting her address down. Will it get delivered? Yes. Will he get it? No. Will he show up in court to challenge it? No. So the next opportunity that he'll know that a judgment has been placed against him is when his paycheck gets grabbed. Imagine being in the U.S. military or armed forces and you're deployed and you're planning on sending money to your mother and father and you look at your check and there's a 60% bite taken out of it. I think you'd be a little ticked and you'd want to do something about it. You contact payroll and say, hey, there's a mistake made here. They're like, no, bud, there's no mistake here. This is for your child support. Like, what child support? I don't have a kid. And if you visit my channel, I'm the paternity coach on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube. You will see there are men who weren't there, who didn't touch the woman, but yet she put him down. And the court still used their power to fleece him of his resources. That is a patent injustice that can be fixed.
And the one thing that I will say to that is those boys in the military, they don't make as much money as you think they do because much of their room and board is paid for out of their paycheck. They serve their country for very little. And you slap on a 60% charge like that, they make even less. But we got to go to some questions right now. Okay. And we got Brent Wilson, and he asks, how early can paternity testing be done?
Truthfully speaking, and first, thank you for that question. That's a great question. You can actually do in vitro testing now, in utero testing rather, before the baby is born, where samples are taken from the mother, and actually you're going to require a doctor to do. This is one of the most expensive forms of testing, and there is a minor risk that some mothers might actually lose the baby. So some moms might actually decline this option. What is usually a more affordable option is to wait until the baby's born and do it on the day that the child's born. I've actually had clients who've heard about paternity fraud, who understood the significance of not signing a document admitting to paternity, which is tantamount to signing a confession saying you did something without proof. So I've had a guy contact me. He was married. He wanted confirmation that the baby that was going to be born at a local hospital was his. He arranged, paid for all the services in advance. By the way, I was a legal DNA services marketer for over 10 years in multiple forms of DNA testing. So I know this industry. I understand it. I've been a service provider internationally. And when we did the testing for this man, 5 days later, because he didn't pay for rush services, I could have given him 1 day service, so that comes at a premium. 5 days later, the truth was revealed. Cupcake, his wife, she had a secret that she didn't tell her husband about. She had a boyfriend that her husband didn't know about, and the boyfriend is the father of that child, not the husband. That man thanked me for helping him get the truth, and it allowed him to free her up from being married to him so that she could go then assign all of the rights, duties, and responsibilities to the guy she had her fun with. Now, that, in my opinion, is a great outcome.
All right. Grant Wilson actually has another question. Do American states have penalties regarding the falsification of birth records?
That's a great question, Grant. It depends. It really depends. Because I've seen the documents that say that you swear or affirm the information that you're going to provide under penalties of perjury, and you'll make that assertion and then provide who is the father and who is the mother of the child, but it becomes a word game because the document doesn't explicitly say biological mother. It doesn't say biological father. But the men I've talked to over 2 decades said, I thought that meant that I caused that pregnancy, hence biological father. So to Grant's question, it's a great question. I've never seen a woman criminally prosecuted for providing the wrong name of a man, because my position is this: she either knew for sure he wasn't the father, or that he might not be the father because she knew of the existence of other paternity candidates. And between her and the man she tells, or the man she leads into believing, she is the one person who has all of the relevant facts. Here's the question that usually never gets asked of women. Is this man or boy who you're alleging is the biological father of the child, is he the only person you had sex with during the 60-day window of conception for that child? Within that window, there's only a yes or no. And then I say you should get her to answer that question under oath and then do the DNA test. And if it comes back she lied, then you go after for all of the pregnancy-related expenses because she lied.
So we have a question from Land Ray. It's a little bit long, but
okay.
Hello, Carnell. Good to see you again from 21 Convention. Love
Right.
the Lady of Justice pin on your jacket.
Thank you. Thank you.
On the flip side of family law, Utah State has allowed unmarried mothers from other states to place children up for adoption without the notice to the fathers. Several lawsuits gained international exposure after multiple out-of-state fathers discovered that children they had believed were aborted or died in miscarriage tried to recover custody of their children.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with any of these cases?
Yes, I am.
Is there a way to consolidate legislative efforts to protect men from paternity fraud at the same time we protect actual fathers from losing their children?
Absolutely, Larry. That's a great question. And yes, but it's going to require someone to take the affirmative position that unwed men have the right, a protected right, to determine which children are theirs, and that they start out with a equal presumption of custody. Currently, in many states, if not most in the United States, an unwed man is presumed to have no legal rights whatsoever. And unless he's been made aware of this paternity, I forget the name of this process, where he has to sign a document before the baby's born saying that he might be the dad and that he would like to assert paternity rights, and he would like verification with DNA and all this stuff. And it's supposed to, in the case of the mother putting the child up for adoption, it's supposed to require that he be legally notified in advance before the child is shipped off to a adoption friendly state like Utah. Okay. Instead, somebody claims that, well, I didn't have his contact information. And the guy was, it's called the Putative Father Registry. I knew if I kept talking long enough, I'd remember it. The Putative Father Registry. To us guys, that means you might be the dad, but if you are the dad, you want to make sure your rights are protected right up front. Because if she's going to give up the baby, you want the baby. Assuming the baby's yours, and you're going to want verification. A way to do this would be to make the legislative position that men have as equally protected right to parentage as women do. And what's amazing in the United States, we say equal protection under the law, but in practice, that's not holding true for men and boys. So someone take that affirmative position like those grandmothers, because when that guy lost a kid, that kid also lost the grandmother, the grandfather, and an entire paternal side of their family. Get people who've been affected to align with you and go. I think that this practice of making Utah the forum for shopping for adopted babies, or rather hijacked babies, kidnapped babies literally, to then sell or push them off into a accelerated adoption because you got them over the state line. I think they should make that something that Utah shouldn't be proud of. But guess what? There's money in it. There's money in the adoption industry, and that industry has also been one of those that has spoken out that wants to speak against my position of DNA testing at birth. If you did DNA testing at birth so that all of the alleged paternity candidates were verified, you would find who did it. Do we trust Cupcake to tell us? And does the data say that Cupcake has been 100% truthful in over 2 decades of data that I have seen from the American Association of Blood Banks data? No. And there are too many conflicts of interest for Cupcake and many of those who are involved to support men and boys having a protected right to their children. Better yet, protected right to know which children they're accused of are actually there, so that then he can make a fully informed decision. But it's not going to happen by itself, because there's so much money involved in the adoption industry. There's so much money in the child support industry. Family law attorneys have actually come out and vehemently oppose our position that why don't we just do a DNA test at the very first hearing where she points and says, that's my child's father. Look, either she's telling the truth or she's not. And make her disclose to the court all of the paternity candidates and test them all till you find Mr. Who did it. But then I'm deemed radical for stating this position. You know, I'm like, well, isn't the court judge called a trier of fact? Yeah. Well, then let's make that position hold true. Let's get the independently verifiable facts of who caused the pregnancy. It's either her egg or it's not. It's either his sperm or it's not. And if it's not him, loose that man and let him go.
All right. So Grant Wilson has another question. How would mandatory paternity testing work in your view? And what is the cost and who would pay?
Okay. How would mandatory DNA testing work? In my view, it's very simple for the testing to be done, but here's the way economy of scale works. The more testing that gets done, it can drive the cost down, because then you could get the providers of the service to move to a greater form of automation, and their cost in doing the testing would go down. So the testing could then go down from much less than, say, $395, give or take a few, for the standard legal test. And then for people who want like 1-day results, it can easily be double, triple that amount. Okay. But the technology existed more than 15 years ago because I was providing that level of service back then. Now, how it works is a lot of samples are already taken from babies at birth. I watched my newborn literally get her mouth swabbed, and she got blood samples taken from her. She got all kind of things done from her. All it would have taken then is to get a DNA sample from the alleged mother and the alleged biological father and compare that with the baby's DNA to ensure, that you don't send the wrong baby home with the wrong couple. You ever heard of baby swapping? In almost every case I found that happened, mothers were reunited with the children that were theirs based on biology. Let's think about that for a second. Biology matters when women get assigned to a child that's not hers. Biology doesn't matter when men get assigned to children that's not theirs. Then how can we hold up the argument for equal protection under law? I say you can't.
Okay, so we're waiting for some more questions to come in. But, from the start of your journey to where we're at right now, how much of, let's just say the United States, how much of a change have you seen? Has it been a big step forward? Oh, wait, we have a question. Let's ask that instead, because I was going off my ass. What states did you lobby, and what were the results?
Oh, Jesus. All right. That's going to be tough. Let's see. Georgia was my first because that was my home state where I had to fight against the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to not allow me to appeal two constitutional arguments. Because I made the case for over 1 million men and boys who were like myself, similarly situated, that the lower court should not have the authority to enforce an order that is proven to be incorrect. The court should have a duty to correct that order, and the initial order should be void from the beginning ab initio. Now, I recognize that a decision of that proportion would have allowed men and boys across U.S. states and territories to be able to use a bright line decision at the high court to be able to fight that for their own cases. And that was the goal. The other one was about equal protection. Because by enforcing a paternity fraud order, you are preventing the biological father from ever having any legal claim to his own child. Well, how was that fair to him? How is that fair to the kid? And how was defrauding the biological father and the child? How was that helpful when it was fraud or a correctable mistake that caused the problem? Listen, women know in many cases how many men or boys are on her list of potential father candidates. Does she always disclose this information to the court? No. Does she always disclose this information to her own attorney? No. When she's in child support court and she's assigned an attorney, does she disclose that to that attorney who says they are representing the best interest of the child, which is, in short, mom's getting a free attorney? No. So, Georgia, I went from Georgia to Florida, California, Michigan, Wyoming, North Carolina, Virginia, I think West Virginia. I got contacted by folks in, I think, North Dakota. I have to look at the book to see the rest of it. It's been a long time ago, so we're talking decades now. So the results were, some of them implemented all of the steps, and there is legislation that is in place. I will say, out of all of the states, though, there's only 2 states that have an unlimited time limit, and that is Ohio and Georgia. I based the Georgia law on Ohio's statute based on what Representative Peter Lawson did there. And by the way, those states where laws got introduced, they were all introduced by men who understood that we shouldn't help aid either fraud or mistake in fleecing an innocent man or boy out of his future and out of his livelihood. That's just my opinion.
Well, follow-up question to that is you said in your interview that a lot of women have come to you with concerns about their brothers facing possible paternity fraud. But if there's one truth in this world, and it's an unfortunate truth, but it is a truth that if we want real change happening, we need to get the women on board. Yes, because what women want, men will follow. So, what are some tactics we can use to try to convince women that getting a paternity test is in her favor?
Well, great question, Chris. Great question. I don't like to make it to where it's going to be optional for her to participate, because since the exclusion rate has varied anywhere from, say, 20 to 45%, depending on what district where the DNA testing has been done. And exclusion rate means those men and boys who got tested turned out were not the father of the child, in spite of the mother's sworn statement under oath that this is my baby's father. Okay? I think it should be done as the best interest of the child. Just take it out of for her, because think about it. How do you give accurate medical history for family perspective when you have the wrong people on the birth certificate? In my case, the child who was a great, beautiful, intelligent child, but I'm not her biological father. What good is my medical history for her? None. It's not relevant for her. So under the grounds, since they like to couch so many things as best interest of the child, truth is always in the best interest of an innocent party. Even if it hurts some other people's feelings, even if some other people don't like it, I take the adversarial position that truth is paramount. And guess what I found out from those kids who have been the kid who was lied to? They wanted to know the truth. And years later, when they're adults, they go back and they confront their mom. Mom, who's my dad? Not the dude that you tricked, Cupcake. Yeah, the kid even gets to call mom Cupcake. And say, well, Mom, who's my dad? And I've watched case after case. The mother cheated on her husband with another married guy and wouldn't tell. One woman came out and says, she didn't want to disclose it because it would mess up the other guy's family. I said, what? Wait a minute. You wreck your own family, lie to your kids, lie to your husband. And by the way, the husband found out that 3 out of the 4 kids were not his. He ended that marriage. So what was she holding on to? Her pride? By the way, in these situations, Cupcake, she holds her pride up like a badge of honor. She will go to the courtroom and say, Your Honor, the law says if my husband was married to me when I conceived, these are his kids and it's your job to get me my money. And if he's not in a state that has legislation like what I'm proposing, what we have in Georgia, Ohio, or some form of it, which will allow him an opportunity to attack that marital presumption of paternity, then he can be trapped by law, ordered to pay child support, alimony, legal fees, get kicked out of the house associated with her consumer debt. Now, how is that a good deal for him? And what did he do wrong? I think that the court can do better.
Great answer, Carnell. So Don has a question. What portion of non-feminist women were in support?
What portion of non-feminist women were in support? Well, if you'll check out my YouTube channel at paternity coach on youtube.com, you'll see that I was very successful in reaching out to invite women to help protect their own sons from paternity fraud. Because over the 2+ decades that I've done this, I've been approached by mothers, wives of husbands, fiancés, girlfriends, grandmothers of guys who they either suspected or they had seen some activity by Cupcake to lead them to believe that he was or was for sure not the father of the child. And they couldn't believe that these laws work this way. So I made an appeal to women very early on, because after going out doing public townhouse meetings to garner support for the proposed legislation, I invited the people to come to the hearings. I invited people to talk about what happened to their family member and how he lost his house, he lost his car, how he was sleeping on their couch, and how he was losing 60% of his net income. And none of the kids from his wife were his. And these women came out in droves. But guess what else I found out? These non-feminist women were very strong supporters for truth. And they are major networkers, man, more so than a lot of us guys have been. What I found out over years, a lot of guys have been told, man, don't show hurt. Just hold your head down, man. Try to just get you another side job. Try to make up some of that money. And then they find themselves getting trapped even further by getting the side job. Watch their child support payments go up based on their increased earnings. And these ladies are saying, I see him killing himself. I want to help him. So I'm an advisor to the Women Against Paternity Fraud, founded by a good friend of mine, Diana Thompson, and the other lady, her name is Thompson as well, who by the way was on the other side. She went to court in California, and California tried to force her to put her husband's name on the birth certificate when she was estranged and separated from her husband. She got pregnant with her boyfriend. The state tried to force her to put her husband down, and she wouldn't do it. So the state of California, in their great wisdom, left the child's birth certificate with nobody, because they would not pursue the biological father, because in the state of California, if you don't challenge paternity within 2 years, the husband is automatically stuck for a lifetime. Man, he didn't even find out during that time. So how I say make a deliberate appeal to women, asking them about their sons, husbands, boyfriends that they care about, and then invite them to come to the table to help use their voice and their passion for ensuring that their own sons don't fall prey to this kind of trap and trickery. And I've been successful at it, and others have as well, who understood, don't take the position that this, even though men and boys are primary victims, that they're the only ones concerned about it. Because when that guy goes to jail and prison, guess who's trying to raise money to get him out? His mom, his girlfriend, his fiance, his new wife. And oftentimes they find themselves battling the ex-wife, who was Cupcake, by the way, who's fleecing the family for kids that are not his. They can't even take care of the kids that are his. How is that right? Women see through the bull.
Well, for your birthday, I'm going to buy you like a dozen cupcakes, and I'll write on each one, this is a cupcake you can trust.
I'll accept that. Make it the velvet, what do you call it? The
Red velvet cake.
Red velvet with the nuts.
So we got another question from Landray. He says, do you have any model legislation that advocates could use as a template to lobby in various states?
The Georgia law is Georgia Code Section 19-7-54. You can Google it. If you Google the term OCGA 19-7-54, you will see the statute. There are some strategic things in the way it's put together, though. And I'm a firm advocate that when you're at the table and you're having to negotiate things, you always ask for more than you need. And what I did there with that legislation, working with my state representative and the Senate, by the way, I got 163 to 0 state representatives to support the bill, 45 to 5 in the Senate. And the governor, who is of a different political party than me, signed that bill. So what a lot of people do wrong, in my opinion, they take a human rights issue and try to turn it into a gender war issue or a political issue. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't make it a racial issue or a gender issue. It's a human rights issue because it affects men, women, and kids. Guess what? When you present it like that, man, legislators can see it and have public hearings. Don't do backdoor deals. Because it was a human rights issue, I made sure that we kept a public campaign going, and I was actively working with the media. I traveled around the city and the state and did public town hall meetings, making people aware that the issue existed. And guess what? Every place I went, there were people who were victims. And now with social media, with Facebook, Twitter, regardless of what your beliefs and thoughts are, people use the platforms. I say, well, use the platform for something you want to use it for, to help you reach people who can help you with advocacy and reaching your state representatives and your state senator. This is not a federal level issue. Don't go to your congressman or your U.S. senator. This is your state representative and your state senator. And when you go with model legislation, you need to understand how it works, how it's crafted that way, why it's that way. Some people have used me for consulting purposes because I helped write this legislation and I won my own case using it. I know a little bit about it. I'm not bragging, I'm saying, but 2 decades of hands-on experience, I might be able to share some tips and insider coaching with you to help you get your own state done.
Alrighty. Grant Wilson has another question. Jamaica just introduced a bill for mandatory paternity testing in the last few weeks. Have you had a chance to look at it? There was a case in Jamaica in which a man found out that all 6 children were not his and beheaded his wife. He's now in jail.
Yeah. I knew about that story with the guy where he got fugabooed, tricked, snookered, shanghaied, because that was pure deception. And there's no way this woman did not know she was doing other things that would lead to pregnancy. Now, I wasn't aware that they have rolled out the legislation, but I would support it. And I would publicly support the position for DNA testing at birth, as in the best interest for the children to get accurate information on their birth document in the beginning. And the sooner that could be done, it could mitigate legislation later and this horrible situation here that has happened. I don't support the killing or harming of the mother or violence against the mother. I don't support that position in any form or fashion. But I will say I could understand how this guy was extremely angry and hurt. And that's something from a human side people tend to overlook. They don't look at men as human beings. They don't look at them as a fellow human being who has been probably working for a great part of his life, thinking he was supporting his own progeny and legacy, to find out they're not his. Do you have any idea of how horrible that surprise would be? And I'm going to say this too, from what I've experienced and had clients tell me. When the mother is often confronted with this information, it is not unusual for Cupcake to talk smack to the guy. In that scenario says, well, you're going to have to pay me anyway, fool. I got away with it and there's nothing you could do about it. that last part.
Okay, so we've got about 10 more minutes remaining. Keep the questions coming in because, well, we've about asked all the questions we could possibly ask the Carnell. So you're make us look good. Come on, bring in the questions.
Right. Well, while that happens, I guess I can ask the question I have of my own. So now I'll apologize if I've asked this kind of in the past. It's kind of a bit of a, I guess, a difficult subject. It doesn't come up, but I think you brought it during this Q&A just a little bit, actually. So, is there any research on how adults who found out that they're a product of fraternity fraud deal with it? This is a question I feel like I've asked before, but I kind of want to see if I can get a fresh answer from you.
Well, I sort of answered it indirectly, but I'm going to respond back this way. In my experience, young and old, when I mean old as old as 55, as young as about 12, have said, the guy who I thought was my dad, if they've had a great relationship with him, they love him and they're grateful for what he has done, but they all tend to ask, who is my dad? In other words, the truth is so important, they want to know. Think about that for a second. Do we tell adoptees who at some point want to know, who am I? Where did I come from? Who were my people? Because sometimes they might want to know, make sure I'm not dating a close relative. You think about that for a second. Might be attracted to a person, drawn to a person, and that person is actually your sister. That is something you want to know way early, right? But we don't tell adoptees, you don't have any business asking that question. In fact, there's research done. They said that for adopted parents, this is a subject you should not hide from the children. You should have this in an open discussion with them when it's age appropriate and done in an age appropriate way, so that they understand that, well, they loved you so much that they wanted to adopt you, and the other parent who put you up for adoption may not have been able to take care of you, had circumstances, situation going on in their life, and they thought it was going to be the best thing for you. And it turned out it was a great match for you and for us, because we wanted somebody to love, and we found you someone who we felt we could love, but we'll support you in getting to find all information about your birth parents. And I've come across story after story, and including some paternity fraud victims. I had a wife who was helping me with her husband. She was adopted. And because I was a DNA service marketer, guess what I told her on how to get answers? How to use services like Ancestry.com and MyHeritage.com and others on how to get information. And guess what? She found her biological family. She had siblings. She was overjoyed, over the moon. It didn't take away her love for the adopted parents. But see, here's what happens to many men, including myself in family court. When you find out you're not related to a child, men have actually been prevented from getting custody of children on the grounds that you're not related to the child. However, they won't vacate the child support order against you on the grounds that you didn't find out sooner. I'm like, what illogic is this? Wait a minute. I can't get custody of the kid because I'm not related to the kid, but you want to stay attached to my money because I didn't find out that she lied to me earlier? How would a guy know that Cupcake had multiple paternity candidates? Unless A, he was an eyewitness, and in my 20 years plus in doing this, I haven't found one man or one boy who says, I saw her get pregnant with that other guy. So barring eyewitness possibility, he's left up to the honesty and the veracity of Cupcake. she has little to none. Because even when she makes a mistake, what do you do? What is the adult thing to do when you make a mistake that is causing people to go to jail or prison for your actions? The adult thing to do would be to step up and correct that thing as quickly as possible to get that person out of that jail and prison situation. That would be the right thing to do. But often I find Cupcake has no honor, and she'll sit there and stand on unholy ground saying, Your Honor, I tricked him fair and square and he didn't figure it out in time, and it's your job to give me my money.
So, a question for you. Ever since I've been a child, there's always been the sensation of talk show hosts bringing couples on and then doing DNA tests to find out who's the father. What is your opinion of those?
I personally think those shows help bring the concept of DNA testing to a much broad scale usage, brought it into the forefront. Now, was there some entertainment value? Yes. Is there a shock value? Yes. But guess what? Every television show has an appeal to a certain audience. And that's what that audience responds to. And now there are court shows that do this, but they do it in a different way than that other show. There are numerous other avenues where people are trying to find relatives, and they get into genealogy and ancestry and lineage and trying to figure out what's my family tree, who are on the branches of my family tree. And my mother says that I'm Italian. And you look at me and go, hold on, wait a minute. That must be some very interesting Italian, right? Right? But I've done that type of testing, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, there is 0% Italian in me. Instead, there's close to 60% Nigerian and some Asian. Yeah, that was amazing. That completely threw me off. And some Native American Indian. Now, those things help, in my opinion, over time, help reduce the shock value of it to where a lot more men and boys started paying attention to, wait a minute, I saw her swear 15 times that guy she brought on, that's the only one that could be the father. And after he sees that on multiple shows with different women of different races, young women, old women, teenage women, all do the same thing. And then this guy hear about this radical guy named Carnell Smith talking about paternity fraud and how you can be trapped by law and you could go to jail and prison just for your name being on that document because they're going to come after you for financial support. Even if she stands up later and says, Your Honor, I tricked him fair and square. There is a 2-year time limit, Your Honor. He found out 2 days after the 2-year time limit. There ain't nothing you can do about it. And watch the judge slap the gavel down and say, so ordered, because the law is the law. All of these things help bring about more public awareness, in my opinion, from shows that started out like that, who I support. And by the way, that shows how I first became aware of the need for DNA testing. But it was my pastor's father who talked to me one-on-one and said, you personally need to get this test done. And from there, I took the hardline position, no man or boy should accept a verbal claim as the only proof that you are the father of the kid. Look, independent verification, that DNA test means that DNA is not going to lie to you. But some women and girls, they want a different kind of DNA. Do not ask. She said you did it. You better accept her word on it. And if you ask any questions, you're insulting her honor. And 3 DNA tests later, you'll be glad why you listened to Carnell Smith. Because it wasn't you. It wasn't the second guy. And the third guy, after he hears about the first 2 guys getting tested, guess what he's going to do? He's going to get a test too. Because I tell him, you're dumb if you don't.
Well, we're going to come to a close here. I apologize to any questions that we didn't get to. Be sure to post them into the live Q&A for Carnell Smith. And when Carnell Smith gets an opportunity, he'll come back, check out those questions, and answer them the best way he can. But I want to leave with a final thought. It's interesting to me that we live in a culture today that women should be proud of their sluttiness. And whether you agree or disagree with it, women push, hey, I'm on a slut walk. If I sleep with a lot of men, it's okay. It's okay if I cheat. But when it comes to paternity tests, she is a saint. She's only been with one man and no other man is possible. She's proud to be a slut, but when it comes to naming the father, she's a virtue of purity.
Yeah, is that an interesting position? I find that position sort of counterintuitive because based on the raw data, the data says, men, you cannot be concerned about her feelings when it comes to paternity. You need independently verifiable facts. And there are, if you look at my YouTube channel, you will see a vast majority of those men are married men. If any place a man should be safe, it should be with the woman who took his name, who took his ring, and went down the aisle with him, or went to the court or the justice of the peace, however they got it done, and got married to him. But sad to say, so many of the girl, you can do whatever you want to do, that position that says you can do everything that men can do, then you must also accept equal accountability and equal responsibility for your actions. So if you're going to do the slut walk based on the behavior, or if you're going to act in a certain way and you think your body count doesn't matter based on the number of men that you have bagged and tagged and done whatever you did with, just know that comes with consequences. It also comes with responsibility. It also comes with accountability. No man has ever been allowed in any court that I've done a lot of court watch, that I ever sat in and listened to, whether I was there with a client or not. I've never seen a man say, well, Your Honor, I'm married to another woman, so therefore my marital status should protect me from the side chick's claim that I'm the father of her baby. His marital status doesn't protect him from something that he did. Then why should a married woman be able to say, well, Your Honor, you should pin this on my husband because he happened to be married to me during this time frame that I was with Joe Bob, Jimmy Ray, and that guy I met at the party. I don't even know what his name was, but I gave him a 10 score based on his performance. I've heard women assign and determine who the father was using performance as the indicator. DNA testing reveals 3 men later, wasn't him. So, yes, let's make it about equal rights. Yeah, let's make it about equal protection. Girl,
so we've got a couple minutes left. I'm sorry to cut you off there. I want to make sure we get off in time so we can get other people watching the videos.
Thank you.
What is the best way for people to find you? I'm sure you've mentioned it many times, but one last time.
All right, for the last time, I'm Carnell Smith. I'm the paternity coach. The best way to reach me is thepaternitycoach.com. THE paternitycoach.com, thepaternitycoach.com. That gets you to all social media and to my site and to the book, Trapped by Law,
which I have a copy of, and one day Carnell Smith is going to sign it. All right, you take care, everyone. Thank you for all of the questions, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great to talk to you again, Carnell.
All right, Vernon, Chris, more power to you guys. Blessings. Have a great holiday. I hope you find my passion has not wavered.
You are definitely an inspiration. You say you want to be an inspiration, people. You are an inspiration to me.
Thank you, brother. Hey, same here. Good to see you doing what you're doing. I'm going to check out your magazine. You saw me donate, right?
Yes, I did.
I support. I couldn't get people to support me, but I still support others. You got me? I'm not bitter. I just understand some people don't understand the value proposition. Help those who are doing it help them keep going. All right.
And with that, we say adios.
Adios, guys. Merry